Wow.
So I moved along because I wanted to come to California.
Uh-huh.
I
Yeah.
wanted to leave, that restrictive. In those days, Russian Soviet studies was who taught there. This is to explain how I wound up with the Esalen group.
Right. Good.
There were people who were interested in literature and very dedicated that way. I had a difficult time with them because they didn't read Russian very well. They read things in translation, and found it suspect that if you are studying a culture, but some people, I learned after teaching for so many years, some people are not capable of learning another language. And so that was always, I would say, well, did you read the Russian studies about this? And some of them didn't. I got embarrassed about all of that. And I thought, do I really want to be, with a group of people? Not only was the Cold War mentality gripping everybody, I grew up feeling like I was the enemy, because when I came at 4 years old from Austria, and this is one thing in the manuscript that Birgit sent you, she said my parents emigrated. They didn't really emigrate because they wanted to.
Uh-huh.
My father was a prisoner of war, captured by the Nazis, taken to Poland. He walked back on foot to his native village.
Wow.
That took courage, but he was recaptured. This time, yes, he wound up in Austria, where he met my mother, who was taken as slave labor from Dnipropetrovsk in the Ukraine.
Uh-huh. Whoa.
She had a twin. I didn't know this till I met her, the twin.
Yeah.
In Ukraine. And the local chief of police his son fell in love with my mother, and she spurned him, would not marry him. So when this chief of police was deputized by the Nazis who occupied the territory, he said, take her. And that was my mother. It's just, the story is amazing. So she wound up laundering and ironing Nazi uniforms in a camp in Austria, where she met my father, who by that time, and this I'm not clear on, he worked in the British zone, because Austria was divided toward the end of the war into all these different zones.
Right.
So they met, and when I look at the pictures, they didn't want to talk about these things very much. But I do have lots of pictures, because they didn't know what was going to happen to them, whether they were going to go back to the Soviet Union or go elsewhere. My mother, who was very bright and had learned some German, wanted to be a veterinarian, and the local farmer liked her, and so he would invite her over. And she said to my father, they're going to either shoot you or send you to the gulag. And that's what happened to many people who had been displaced, because Stalin did not want them coming back with stories about how wonderful it was in the West.
Right. They were all distrusted and imprisoned,
so
partly because they had been captured.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what can you do?
Yeah.
Many years later, about 10 years later, I saw a video of Russian prisoners of war on YouTube, because I imagined what that was like. But my father was very traumatized because that came on top of the fact that his father, who was a rich, prosperous peasant called a kulak,
Right.
the land was taken away. My grandpa was sent to Siberia. The family was thrown out in the snow. Go where you will.
Yeah.
And the orchard was completely destroyed.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
There's just a recent program about раскулачивание, which is the
the expropriation of the kulaks.
yes, thank you.
Yes.
So it's emotional, and when I get emotional, kind of brain says, "Oh God, that's horrible." But this is an hour-and-a-half program that is extraordinary.
Yeah.
What happened was the entire backbone of agriculture was destroyed.
Yeah.
Millions of people. I didn't think it was that many, but millions, like the Indian March here, the Trail of Tears.
Right.
Some of them were forced to walk, and their children froze, they froze. So
yeah. So you came with that traumatic family background.
Yes.
Into an environment where you were then suspect because you were members of the enemy.
Say, you're a pinko commie.
Right.
I didn't know what a commie was.
Yeah.
Or, for that matter, when I came, so I was born in Klagenfurt, Austria, 9 months after the war.
Yeah.
My parents could not get married. There was no Orthodox priest. They were both kind of religious, but they wanted the traditional.
Yeah.
So I was 2 when they got married.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So I realized that I was a celebration of the end of the war.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
That, yes, it was traumatic, but there was that passion that they had for each other. And they weren't very well matched in some ways, because my father was the land taken away, then being captured.
Right.
In Prokhorovka, which was a key, Kursk was a key battleground with the tanks, and his village is not too far between Kursk and Belgorod.
Right.
And he wanted to go back. My mother said, no,
yeah,
we're leaving.
Right.
But they did have a wonderful circle of close friends in Klagenfurt. Some of them went to Venezuela, some to Brazil, some to Australia.
Wow.
We went to New York because there was a family that sponsored us. The Tolstoy Foundation would, in the local Russian newspaper, Russian language newspaper, Novoye Ruskoye Slovo.
Yeah.
Now, so I still have that from the newspaper.
Wow.
A family of 3, they named us.
Yeah.
And total strangers, said, we will take them in until they find work and can settle themselves.
Uh-huh.
Which my father did for his friends from Klagenfurt, because they didn't like living in tropical climates.
Yeah.
It's so interesting. They said, we just don't like it here.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they came with their children. So our 3-room apartment in Brooklyn became this place of, the whole refugee thing. I experienced it at another level.
Right.
So all this integration, how do you integrate into this country? There's so many contradictions. And so I escaped and this also, Birgit didn't know, because she's not familiar with the neighborhoods. There are prosperous neighborhoods in Brooklyn that I escaped to near the Prospect Park and Grand Army Plaza Library. So I was always pulled toward culture.
Uh-huh.
But what helped me was to, my parents weren't very educated, but they wanted us to be educated, their children.
Right. Right.
And I was able, through Russian literature, I went to school on Saturdays.
At a Russian school?
A Russian school, a church school.
Right.
The church stuff was, had to take it with a grain of salt because the priest would preach, love thy neighbor and be kind and all this. And on Sundays, if the kids were running around, he would come out and shake his fist. And so I called him on it, and he said, "You better watch out. I'll tell your father." I said, "I don't care." So that energy that I got from understanding my parents' culture without them being able to convey it.
Yeah.
And the horrible stories they didn't tell us. I understood later when I studied psychology that it was too traumatic.
Yeah.
Especially for my father, because he was wounded physically.
Yeah.
So he was strong, he was very bright, he learned carpentry, he learned a lot of things on his own. But he wasn't able, he drank on weekends. My mother was very good about that. She realized that he got depressed during the week, and so he needed a weekend to relax with a few of his buddies and some vodka, and she would cook. So the atmosphere in the slums, even though it was horribly bleak, I mean, there was a warmth and a camaraderie and a real cultural appreciation of one another, even though there were Ukrainians. Some of those families were Ukrainians and Belarus, and there were even Iranians who spoke Russian. So it was really, it was a very vital. But I couldn't bring that to class because I was a commie.
I see.
Not everybody. Some of the teachers I knew when they were calling the roll the first time, they'd look at my name and they'd I knew that this wasn't going to be easy.
Right.
In kindergarten, I had two languages, Austrian German, and Russian, and nobody knew what I was saying. I was terribly frightened. I got under the table. And I wouldn't come out. They called my mother. I was, because I couldn't understand what they were saying. It was horrifying.
Right.
So I became a linguist. To trace it back. Anyway, so life is.
So you got out in California, and how did you become involved with Esalen?
I taught at the Army Language School, which was at that point called DLI, because all the armed forces were involved.
Yeah.
And that was interesting. I had college students. I wouldn't have been able, it was the Vietnam War, I wouldn't have been able to teach there without the kind of guys, they're mostly guys, the women came in later. They were smart in college, and they realized they don't want to get their heads blown off in Vietnam. So they took the qualifying exams for language school.
I see.
So the first 3 years there, I had really good students. And I was able, even though there was a PA system, to talk about the topics we weren't supposed to talk about. Religion and politics. And then I would invite them to my home. We would cook. There were also it was a immersive, very good program at that point. Then a new commandant came in, and the volunteer army came in.
Right.
And I got people that couldn't speak English, let alone any other language.
Right.
And women, and there was pregnancy. they would come to me with their girls would come and say, you know, they were living in the barracks together. And I said, I got to get out of here.
Yeah, yeah.
But in the meantime, I was getting saturated with, I don't want to call it New Age. Part of it was New Age, but part of it was also the whole freedom of exploration in California, of the psyche, of the body. And I went to Esalen. A friend invited me to go to the baths at night because it was open, free to the public between midnight and 6, I think. Yeah, around that time. So half the night. And I learned a lot of things from meeting the kind of people who would come there from town or from the south of Esalen, people that lived in the woods. At that time, growing marijuana was very difficult and very dangerous.
Yeah, yeah.
But I didn't smoke a lot, but I understood that there was a real opening happening. I even met someone from Pitkin Avenue where we had lived. He went to, he said, you emigrated. I emigrated to Los Angeles. And so I said, what are you doing in the Big Sur woods? He said, I love the ocean. I hate cars. This is the place to be. So this is a boy from Pitkin Avenue. So it was, it was mind expanding and emotionally very also expanding. Esalen, not only the beauty of the place, but the natural environment is so overwhelming. The people, aside from getting in the tubs, people would leave their city personalities, but it just made you naturally contemplate, what is all this about? Like psychologically.
Right.
So there's a Zen kind of thing that happens. So.
And then you ended up working for them?
Okay, here's what happened. I was talking to my friend Joe, the one from Pitkin Avenue, and he said, you should talk to, my car broke down. Yeah. I was visiting his girlfriend, who was manager of the kitchen. And so she said, people go to town, just get a ride and get the part that you need. And so I did. And the guy who was driving to town was Brian Like, who was, I don't know what he was at that time, but we got to talking and he said, I taught a DLI locally. He said, what are you doing here? I'm visiting Joe and Ione. Oh, great. And of course, Russian if you were teaching there. And I said, yes. He said, Michael Murphy, who founded this place, and some of his colleagues are doing something with the Soviet Union. You should find out. I said, well, why? He said, they need you. So he intuited that some linkage was possible. And at that time, I had quit. I was doing a radio program, public radio there, local. And I remember that day. Yeah, I came home from the program. I was all high from the music, playing LPs. It was so different then. And there's a note next to the phone, call Michael Murphy. And I'm kind of like, ooh, what's going on here? And I had been reading, I was working part-time in a bookstore. I was reading one of his books. I think it was Jacob Adabit, about the painter who whose paintings change with his moods. They actually change in real life, and there's a KGB agent that visits him in his dreams. So this was interesting to me. Picked it off the shelf at the store, and I thought, this is all very interesting, but the women characters are terrible. This, and some of the writing is really, because all these psychic experiments, and it was all new stuff. He had just been to the Soviet Union a few years before.
Right.
So it was all percolating for him.
And that trip was the Tbilisi trip where they went. Yes, the conference.
That was this is before.
Even before that, yeah.
74. Yes, it's before that trip. I'm talking about like in the 70s, when I first started meeting them.
Yeah.
They were getting ready to go.
Okay.
Jim and Mary were getting ready. So he said, what do you know about Tibetan Buddhism in the Soviet Union? I said, hello, you called? I said, absolutely nothing. He said, oh, well, for some reason, I said, but I do know Soviets who are still teaching at DLI, Soviet immigrants, and one couple, she teaches, and he is a scholar of not just Tibetan, but other forms of Buddhism in the Soviet Union. I said, yeah, I could. He said, can you set up a meeting? I said, sure.
Yeah.
And who else do you think we should meet? Because we're going. I said, you kept me up all night with this book that you just wrote. And he said, that's very interesting that you just read my book.
Yeah.
And so I began to see these kind of synchronicities because I had experienced them before. I had studied polarity therapy, which was a form of massage at a local, we called it University for Man, and it was free. People would give free classes at Monterey Peninsula College. It was very advanced in some ways. Some of the people that wound up in Pacific Grove and Monterey, I don't know, there was a feeling there. And when I read some of V.S. Naipaul's memoirs, he said Pacific Grove was the most spiritual place he'd ever lived in. And here's this guy, this India, the Caribbean. Right. There was something, and the noosphere, the gestalt of what we were trying to do was already forming. It was the kind of aura that was attracting people who wanted to make peace. For God's sakes, we had these nuclear weapons.
Right.
We were wasting money. We're not educating our children anymore. Oh, I was so appalled at the level of ignorance of my students at the language school.
Yeah.
It was extraordinary.
I'm sure it would be worse today. I have to.
Yes. I mean, they couldn't find the simplest places on the map.
Right.
And I thought, what are they putting in your brains? Or are you watching so much TV that you can't remember anything that you're learning?
Yeah.
So all of this, I had read also when I came to Monterey, Synchronicity, the psychic discoveries behind the Iron Curtain, Ostrander and Schroeder. That book came out talking about all the experiments in the Soviet Union and in Czechoslovakia. So why was I reading it? Well, I was already on that kind of psychic journey of what is what surrounds, what is our environment, what do we bring to it, what does it give us, those interpersonal, intercultural. So I knew what Michael had already, because he had read that book, and that's why he went in 71. That was his first trip with Nikolaev and the remote. So Michael and Jim came to Monterey with their significant others, who went shopping half the time, because Carmel was, it's a quaint, but we got into some heavy conversations with the emigres that I invited. There would be either a huge lunch, a walk along the ocean in Carmel Beach, and that's where we created the Soviet Studies program.
Out of those conversations.
Yeah. Yes, after that week, because one of the guys was a real bear, but he was very knowledgeable about a lot of things. He had been an actor, he was a writer, and he challenged them. So there are very interesting people. One was a literary scholar who wrote the first dissertation about Brodsky. He knew Brodsky. So there was an interesting mix. So Dulcie and Michael and Jim and Mary got a feeling for some of the types of people they might encounter in the Soviet Union.
Okay.
That was the purpose of that.
So they met members of the Soviet intelligentsia.
Yes.
Who were
consistent. Taught at BLI.
Right.
Yes. And they had their refusnik, some of them were staunch and others said, we got such great educations.
Yeah.
We're making our living well. There was one guy, Tannenbaum, he created a system of language learning that was so esoteric with like graphic sign kind of. It was great because I too, at a distance, I knew these people, but I knew only one couple really well.
Yeah, yeah.
So for me, it was very interesting when I thought, God, our emigration was so different. We were forced out, and that also made me think of the Russian diaspora, which is huge.
Right, right.
And so
that resulted in
that afterwards we had lunch, and Michael said, we have got to have a Soviet Studies Center. This is so interesting. We're going to invite scholars, and because this is something is trying to emerge. That was that early period of what is trying to emerge, and how do we do this? And Michael said to me, "Do you want to be head of this?" I said, "No, I don't want to be head of anything. I'm not a good manager, but I will help you with translation. I'll help you with cultural understanding, because I don't do well with telling people what to do. I don't take orders well. So that's not my area.
Right.
I'm very good in between. And that's what I've done, is intermediate, because for me, growing up, I had these, the Cold War, it was playing out for me on a world scale. I was thinking, oh my God. So how do we get these two sides to get together?
Right.
And I didn't really realize that. That was what was going on.
Yeah, yeah.
But then it became more conscious, and all the different people that I took over, like Joel and David Woolcombe with Peace Child, because I was interested in music and children.
Right.
Cynthia Lazaroff.
So when was the first time you went to the Soviet Union? Your first visit?
Before Esalen. I went to the Soviet Union in 1968.
Okay.
In graduate school, when I was part of intensive language training at Indiana University.
Okay. I went to the summer school of that language training.
You're kidding. Well, I taught
Indiana, but years later. But
yeah,
when I was in,
so you know what that was like.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
And if we caught somebody speaking English, we didn't punish them, but
yeah, it was social pressure. Yes.
The pressure, but it also taught, from what I observed, was that certain people have parts of personalities that only come out when they learn another language.
Right. Well, I think this is a digression, but I think I have a different personality in Russia and when I'm speaking Russian.
Yes, so, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
yes. Yes, I totally corroborate that. I could see that with, like, one girl came to me and she said, I'm studying this language and I love all this literature, but I just can't put the words together. I don't know who I am when I'm saying these words. I said, okay, but don't speak a lot. Give yourself time. You're pressuring yourself. Relax.
Yeah.
Part of what the language learning, and Joseph Golden, by the way, I took a lot of time the last few days looking for material about
Please,
this.
yeah, I'd like to hear about it.
I will send it to you. You read Russian. So yeah, it's not great, but it will, what happened. I'm going to give you a fact here why I've been on Birgit about this the last few years. Now she's more free. We need a website commemorating Joseph. He's not even in Wikipedia.
Wow.
Yeah. It is, my heart breaks when I think that he gave his life up, really, to making peace. He really did.
Yeah.
When he went to Chechnya, and he never took care of himself. So his health, of course, he had a heart attack. I thought he would have had it earlier. I lost touch with him in the 90s because I branched off and went to Eastern Europe to do Frommer's Guide to Eastern Europe, because I had been in Czechoslovakia when I was in Europe. I was curious to see all those countries. Yeah. So in the 90s, I don't know a lot about him. Joel wasn't part of the original few early space bridges. He was good at the teleconferences from Henry Dakin's gallery, but he was not involved at all
in the space bridges. So I have talked to Evelyn Messenger and Kim Spencer and Jim Hickman, Peter Gerway.
So, good. You got Peter.
So I found Peter. He was in Spain. Anyway, so I've constructed a version of that and Evelyn has corrected it. Kim has corrected it. There's a section in there about Joel, and he's corrected his section. But still, I feel like there's some pieces missing. So
you just triggered a memory. I think Harriet Crosby, her outfit, ISAR, Institute for Soviet American Relations.
I've heard about her, and I understand that she won't talk to people about this.
No, she won't. But that's because for her, anyway, I do have something that she published that has a chronology.
Oh, really?
I will look for it. Yes.
Okay, that would be great.
Yes, that will help you, because she funded a lot of things.
Okay.
And why else? When she left Washington, D.C., she left politics. She's now involved in the natural world. She has, I think, an animal sanctuary. I lost touch with her. We were never, part of this also has to do with class.
Yeah.
I found I didn't have trouble in the academic world, but like funding meetings, and you either had to be a brand or a famous academic, or there was a lot of kind of groupthink.
Yeah.
And you had to break through that. And Harriet came from Pillsbury money, big money.
Yeah.
But if you said something she didn't like, you just didn't exist.
Okay. Yeah.
There was a lot of citizen diplomacy necessary in the group.
Yeah.
And some of those prejudices still carry on. So, and I know this for a fact, she was one of the women heiresses that fell in love with Jim.
Oh, okay.
Whatever falling in love meant. He was charismatic, but she played a large role, and she knew Ambassador Hartman. And she got Jim into Washington that way.
I see.
So a lot of personal relationships here are important.
Yeah, absolutely.
And some people say, oh, Anya, don't gossip. But if you look at history and how it's made by individuals who connect, and whether they fight or they fall in love, or I want your real estate, or it's still going on. So Gwendolyn Grace.
Okay. Never
from
heard
the Grace Company.
Oh, the Grace Company.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
And her sister, heiresses, both funded different things. Wendy had been married to the grandson of Radzianko, who was killed in the Duma. So she was interested in Russian history because of her relationship with, which ended, but nonetheless, there was this whole Russian thing that she got involved in. Right. And she gave Jim a lot of money. They helped bring into being a lot of things that might not have come into being.
Right.
Because it was just not a business. It was strong, emotional, synchronous, enthusiastic. It's very interesting how these things happen.
Yeah.
So I will definitely send you Harriet's.
Okay, that would be great.
Yeah, she was a Washington activist.
Right.
She knew Hartman, and that helped because her secretary was extraordinary. She was so helpful. And have you seen the ISAR bulletin that they put out? They were very important.
Yeah.
In some ways, because they did the legwork.
Let me interrupt you about this, because here's the problem I have. Is this is such a rich period, and there's so much to be told about it, and it's one chapter of a 6-chapter book.
Yes, so, I did look at the table of contents.
Right. So I have to try to find what's the two things: what's most important, and who will talk to me, because the value of my book is in the testimony or remembrance of people, because I think Brigitte is writing a history and it's focused only on this period, and that's a different thing, and you can do that on secondary sources. And so people like, I can mention someone like her or someone like Sharon Tennyson. It's too important to leave out. Sharon Tennyson won't talk to me. Through a friend, she sent me a message, read my book, which I bought a copy of her book. So I will reference her, but the meat is people's remembrance. So when you have a chance to look at this chapter, you'll see that it's what Evelyn remembers, what Kim remembers, what Jim remembers.
Yes.
These are what I have to contribute by pulling these things together. So for people who are important, I need to know that. And particularly, I don't want anyone from that period to say, well, what an idiot. He doesn't ever mention so-and-so.
Right.
But that's not going to be what I have to base the book on. And I have the same thing. So I've written a draft of this period until the dissolution of the Soviet Union. Now I have a second chapter. And it's been difficult to find the inner logic, if you will, of the period. Not just funny stories, but what's the inner logic? What was it coming from? What did it lead to? And then with the dissolution of the Soviet Union, I'm trying to do the same thing at that period. And there's some overlap. Some of the people, like Jim, become not a citizen diplomat, but an entrepreneur.
Yes.
And Joel, who starts with citizen diplomacy and becomes an entrepreneur, or maybe always was, I don't know. But that's what I'm trying to piece together. And then, as Jim said to me, we have a whole other side of this story, which was what was going on in the minds of the Russians. And we have very little understanding of that, because this isn't a one-sided story. This is a collaborative effort.
That's why Joseph is so important.
Exactly. And so when did you first meet Joseph, or how did you meet him?
There was an illegal apartment that Joseph partially lived in and had meetings in. He called it headquarters.
Okay.
Yuzhinsky Переулок.
Okay.
Yuzhinsky.
Yeah.
It was near the Arbat.
Yeah, it sounds familiar. It sounds familiar.
Someone may have mentioned it.
Yeah.
Anyway, I was brought there. Who brought me there? Now I can't remember, but I will go. I think it was with the AHP group. No, it had to be earlier. I can't tell you that yet, but I will write it down.
Okay.
And then write it. So it'll be in text. You'll have it.
Great. And what was your first impression of him when you met him?
I looked at him and I thought, brilliant. And I thought, in another lifetime, you could be in a Napoleon. His ability to strategize and see the big picture was very impressive. He was eloquent in Russian.
Yeah.
His English was interesting. It was occasionally incorrect, but in the most wonderful way. So that it's like someone with a French accent will say things, and it charms people.
Yeah. So charming. Yeah.
But he also was inclusive. When I think of Joseph, when I looked at him, there was a Napoleon and then there was a globe. In those days, I meditated a lot. And so my first impression of people was pictorial. I would get an image. In fact, when I introduced Joel to Joseph, we were at lunch or dinner in one of the hotels. And I looked at them talking, and it was like Napoleon talking to Moses. I just said, oh, this is a match here, energetically.
Right.
Joel can be very, he's congenial and all that, but
yeah.
Whereas Joseph is like a ball of fire, he's all over the place. And there was the globe.
Yeah, yeah.
So Joseph was trying to pull people together for an event. And these are the details, because I had not as many trips as Jim, but unlike Jim, he didn't have to speak for two sides. So when I interpreted, and it's very hard to tell people that you can't talk for 2 hours straight, going back and forth on a serious topic. You can make dinner conversation and casual things, but to really focus and get it right,
it's exhausting.
Trade off with someone else.
Right.
That's what they do at the UN. That's what.
Yeah.
But I didn't study professionally, but I understood immediately. This is really pulls on your brain. And my sugar would go down within half an hour.
Yeah.
Especially with the AHP, we'd go to the hospital where they put dissidents and call them crazy. And so here I am, just like, whoa, like I'm losing my mind here.
Yeah.
So I learned to bring packets of sugar with me for my brain.
Wow. Wow.
There I was.
Yeah. And the people on each side also don't understand the stress you're under. Honestly,
they don't.
Yeah.
They don't.
Yeah.
Because they can translate 2 or 3 sentences and say, "Oh, well, I speak the other language." I said, "Oh, yeah."
Yeah. Yeah. Not even close. Not even close. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, in my childhood, when I was telling you, it was bleak. So I had a good imagination. And the Russian school I went to, one of my teachers was a very skilled at keeping people's attention. She could have been a great actress. She made poems come alive. I was very lucky. I had dreams that I was being visited by Pushkin.
Wow. Wow.
And I was able to translate some of his poems later on. I didn't know I was going to do that, but so she carried that spirit. And that's like some gurus, some teachers embody the spirit so much that they convey that information. And that's why Zoom is great, but it's not the, we don't have the aroma. It's not the same thing. Come on. I hope the pandemic has shown that to humanity. So, yeah.
So back to Joseph, one of the questions I have is that everyone talks about what great connections Joseph had. And yet the descriptions of him that I've seen is of a somewhat unkempt person, wasn't quite clear how he made a living, holding meetings in an abandoned apartment, and then introducing people to cosmonauts and people at the Academy of Sciences.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get my head around how that happened.
I will give you those details. How he had Velikhov.
Yeah.
Who was high up in the Russian Academy of Science.
Right. But how does Velikhov have a connection to a guy who's marginal to the Soviet society?
Well, there was a commission to study man, the complex study of man. So he knew enough people. He was the scientific secretary. I think his training was in microbiology or chemistry. He had a scientific background.
He did. Okay. Yeah.
He also studied, and this is how he learned English. There was a Bulgarian, Lazanov, who had a language learning method called Suggestopedia.
Okay.
And Joseph studied this way. I think Lozanov came and gave lectures, but I can check on that. And that's the kind of thing I can't find in the letters and all the stuff that Joel has, but I do have a friend who emigrated to Germany, and I tried to get Birgit to interview her, but I don't know why. The chemistry didn't work, and Anya was sick, but now I have a list of questions from you that I can get clarified. But I know that because he knew Yushkevich's, who was at Gosteleradio as an engineer, but he became more than that, they were all interested in human potential. So he was the scientific secretary of the complex study of man.
And this was done by the Russian Academy of Sciences.
Yes, that was a group that was looking at the fact that they were in stagnation when they had so many brilliant people.
Right.
Like, what's going on here? We know it's Brezhnev and all of that, but how do we bust out of that without winding up in jail?
Right.
So Velikhov was very far thinking. Who else? He also knew, this is where the space thing comes in. He knew another academician, Boris Rauschenbach,
right,
who wrote a very interesting study, which if someone would pay me, I would translate it. So he had people who were Rauschenbach, Kitaev Smyk, who died. He was very intercultural. He understood so much. So I'll get his name to you.
Yeah.
These were all people who were kind of the avant-garde in terms of exploring human potential. Скрытные человеческие возможности is human potential.
Okay.
I mean, literally means the study of latent or hidden reserves. That's how they translated human potential.
Right.
So Joseph studied English with Lozanov, or someone who trained in his method. And part of that method is when you are too engaged in your executive function, you're not absorbing material, you're not absorbing things the way a child does. So Lozanov, and I know he got this from somewhere, but I haven't traced it yet. He said, put on music, best music to play. I can hear his voice. Adagio, second movement of Baroque concerti. So everybody lies down on pillows, Esalen style, and absorbs reams of vocabulary words. They're not related even, but they remember them because it's been absorbed in that way of, like I said, the way a child just hears it, and then, a year later, he's making full sentences. So this method.
Yeah.
So they were studying that. Then there were all these guys doing experiments,
But Joseph was part of these experiments, or he just knew these people?
He knew about them because they were included in this complex approach, this comprehensive study.
Oh, okay.
So, and he was alone. He had had a wife who died of a kidney problem. And he was so depressed, he needed something to do. And this studying English. He studied it because she was from America.
Oh.
Yes, she was
Okay.
half Russian, half American. I think her name was Joy. I never could pin that down. He never wanted to talk about that.
Uh-huh.
But I can ask Tanya because she met her.
Uh-huh.
So Joseph knew people through film because he wrote screenplays.
Okay.
And he knew Posner, and Posner's father was in the movie world.
Okay. Okay.
And
so he was a microbiologist and he wrote screenplays. Amazing. Yeah.
He was also had been in the Merchant Marine.
Uh-huh. Okay.
So he had traveled, you know.
Right.
So he had an idea of this globe, not just from geography books. And he had interest. He was so the Soviet American thing for him also was personal, because he wasn't allowed to emigrate so that she could have a kidney operation. They told him you can't even leave because we're working on a kidney transplant, but she died before. And yeah, it was just tragic. Yeah. So, but you see, he also had this fountain. He understood theater really well.
Uh-huh.
That's why there were the demonstrations in Red Square. He knew how to stage events. That's where the big screen, the diamond vision, because he was, you know, some Europeans had come, he had met them, and then he applied for the Rolex Award. So his feelers were out, and then Yushkevich's was affiliated with UNESCO. So that's pretty out there.
Yeah, yeah.
If you can get a Zoom with him about Joseph, because
well, how would I find him?
I can give you his email. It might have changed, but at least it's a start, and we can find him.
Yeah, okay.
I can call someone up and say, "Where's Gendik?" I interviewed him for, what was I writing? Oh, yes. I was showing the kinds of people that could contribute to the archive. So for me, it would be a recapitulation and I would get questions answered that way. And I met with Yushkevich. He said, "Oh, I'm just here from Paris for a week, but I'm happy to meet you. You know Joseph, you know all this history, you interpreted for them, of course." And I didn't know who he was except by name, but when I met him, I was very impressed with him.
Okay.
As, you know, as an entity, as the energy he carried, his, also he was Lithuanian, but he was multicultural. The whole thing of understanding the way different cultures interact, like he would say, well, you know, I could have pushed this thing through, but I knew I shouldn't push because then they'll be looking and saying, "Oh, he wants that. We're not going to give that." You have to. And that's how we did the first space bridge, because he okayed it at Costello Radio. Everybody else was on vacation.
Wow. Yeah.
So Joseph had a very good phrase. He said, "You have to pierce through the armor of the bureaucracy. Pierce through it."
Yeah, that's an excellent phrase.
He said, "But you can't do it when they're watching. You have to, you know." And the other phrase he used that everybody loved, this one he used more. He said, "You can have an effect on a person. You can flatten them." you can flatten them. In other words, energetically, you don't have to argue, you just flatten them. And I immediately understood that he was looking at the kind of invisible, this new age thing about energy. Yes, there's a way that some people don't use a gun. They don't have to. They just, they can intimidate you to the point where you are flattened. You can't respond.
Right.
It's the CEO who makes 50 times more than the rest of his workers who comes in, I'm entitled.
Right.
Hell with you. I mean, Zuckerberg is like a robot. The first few times I watched him, I thought, oh my God.
Yeah.
So Joseph really had backing. And here's where Harriet comes in also. The second time he was put in a psychiatric hospital, not because he was crazy, although there's, it's because he was raising the level too high.
Yeah.
Breakthrough.
Pushing beyond the boundaries.
Pushing beyond, because he would get desperate. And part of it is, like I said, he didn't take care of his health. He would get into these manic states and he just couldn't come down because he wasn't eating. He wasn't eating.
Right. So you don't think he might have had the manic depressive?
I think he had some, but it's exacerbated when you live in conditions that don't nurture you.
Yeah.
He had a very close friend, Vitold, who died. Vitold was overweight, not obese, but really solid. He actually took care of Joseph. He fed him. He would make him come over and eat real food, not just little cups of yogurt. There's little blue jars of yogurt. When I saw Joseph at the headquarters in the corner, I said, Joseph, what is that? He said, oh, it's my food. I said, there's 50 bottles of yogurt here. He said, yeah, I like yogurt. just stop it. Oh, that's sales.
Yeah.
So Vitold was important also because he had been abroad. He got himself a funny job at MGU downtown.
Yeah.
Near the National Hotel. He also liked this idea of human potential because he began to see where Joseph was coming from and why it was necessary, the interdisciplinary thing Joseph was trying to do. And he was an engineer, so he could help with things that broke down, soldering, lamps. And so he was a technical assistant, but he also grounded Joseph. He gave him a kind of home because Vitold was a good cook. He had a I won't say lovely, but comfortable home. And once Vitold died, that was that.
Yeah. So you started to say that Harriet had a role when?
Yes, Harriet helped rescue Joseph from the psychiatric ward.
And she was able to do that?
Yes, I can't remember the details.
Yeah,
but I can.
It's you don't need to. I don't want to stretch you to find every detail.
This is interesting to me because I would like to remember something like that.
Yeah,
she had pull because the Soviets knew who had money. So, if Harriet called Velikhov, it was because he knew she had more pull here.
Right. I see.
Not because he wanted money, but because he knew that the NGOs depended on funding.
Right.
And that it was important. And Tanya would know. Yeah, that's very interesting. That was, the AHP was involved. Harriet Crosby was part of the Association of Humanistic Psychology.
Okay.
And a lot of good material and intercultural communication, especially in psychology, came out of that.
I see. Okay.
Yes. And then Steve Cull became part of the Levada. No, there's some important. Yeah.
They became part of the Levada polling organization. Yeah.
Sorry.
Became part of Levada's polling.
I think he helped set it up. Yes.
Okay.
But he had been part of the AHP.
I see.
Very active. Those first trips were very groundbreaking because we interviewed a lot of people who practiced psychotherapy, which was on the rise. Then the classical psychiatrists, child psychologists, and people like Tom Greening made very close friends with some of them. And they continued for 20, 30 years.
Right.
So that was Fran Macy died a couple of years ago. No, not a couple already. Geez. He had been a Russian scholar and went into the Peace Corps. So Macy was very important. He pulled in the ecology people, Yablokov. So like I said, personal relationships were very important because a certain level of respect professionally has to happen. And then if there's a personal
relationship,
chemistry and connection there, then that's productive, and that work has continued.
Yeah. And so you introduced Joel to Joseph because Joel was interested in this communications, and I know Joseph had this vision of the screens and
exactly. There was that, and also we went to the Peace Committee. I said, Joel, you're not going to like this, but we have to make a courtesy. We have to pay a courtesy call to the official Peace Committee.
Right.
So that you get an understanding of the bureaucracy and what they say and what they think peace is and how to achieve it. And that was a way to understand what Joseph was dealing with, what kind of bureaucracy he had to surmount and implement his ideas. He had very good backing, but you also, some of my people that I took over, they just didn't understand that you can't march in and do whatever you want anywhere. They said, but this is a great idea and it should be. I said, listen, they want to know who you are, why you're doing this, what you can bring and what you want to take away. So you can't just barge in. And they would say, oh, this isn't working. I said, they're on a different time scale. They're not going to answer your phone call this week.
Yeah.
They're just not.
Yeah.
That's not how they work. They have to meet with so-and-so, get it approved, and the wheel has to start turning. So Joseph had this backlog of relationships that he had already founded. He knew people in Tbilisi because they had come to Moscow, because like Viktor Krivorotov, the healer, who met with the guy Whitmore from England, who was interested in psychology and sports. They met because Krivorotov's father was a famous healer. Everybody knew his name.
Mm-hmm.
And Joseph knew Krivorotov. So all of those people that were in the avant-garde, you know, whether it had to be sub rosa at first, but, you know, as the 80s opened up, was easier. We also introduced Sharon. I gave her the Esalen contact list. Did she ever say thank you? No. That's a different story.
Right.
So she did a great deal, but she never came to Esalen, which is, I mean, it's extraordinary. You're working in the same, however, as fate would have it.
Yeah.
They met in Moscow in the 90s in Red Square after all those years.
Whoa. Whoa.
It's just like, whoa. Like,
yeah.
No, it must have been 2000. Yes, 2000.
2000? Wow.
In the 2000s. Yes. I have a photo because Evelyn and Kim were there videoing with the Murphys.
Right.
And they all happened to meet at Red Square. Right? I looked at this photo and I went, okay, they couldn't meet in California.
Right.
60 miles away from each other.
But I thought that she had an office in this Sacramento street.
She did, but Esalen didn't.
Esalen didn't.
No.
Okay.
Washington
Kim was
Street.
telling me that he said you were with the Washington Institute on Washington Street, but not in Sacramento Street.
Yes, that's
okay. Got it. I got to correct that in my notes.
Yes, yeah. I'll send you. I can photograph them and send you. Washington Street was a 3-story. Well, with the basement, it was 4 stories. Just a residential building. And Henry got called in because the neighbors said, "What are all these people coming in here at all hours of the night? What's going on here?"
Yeah, yeah.
So Jim lived upstairs and had an office. Then there were offices that Henry used. He had, you know, conference transcription. He had translation. He had so many interests.
Right, right.
And then downstairs was his personal. That was for the people working with computers. He'd sit you down and put you in front of a computer and say, "Good luck," and walk out. That was how
right.
So, and then on the first floor was a kitchen, a big living room, and his back office.
Okay.
And then downstairs were the parapsychological experiments they did.
Yeah, Jim mentioned that, the instructions, some machinery and so
yes.
Yeah.
So Henry, that building got too small, and Henry moved to an auto body shop, beautiful building on the outside.
Yeah.
And he just gutted it and made a penthouse and for meetings.
Right.
That was Sacramento Street. That
was Sacramento Street.
Hub.
Okay.
3220 was a frontline intellectual and activist center. Very.
Good phrase.
Joel had his office there for a while. Very important.
Right. So I had heard it described elsewhere as a kind of an incubator for social activism.
Yes, that's one. Yes.
Yeah.
The UN Association didn't have an office there. They had a cubbyhole. They would use it to meet.
Okay.
So lots of people came through.
So in a newspaper article about Joel's work, I read that he initially, or maybe he told me this, he was initially funded by the Washington Institute, by Henry.
Yes. It's unfortunate that Henry chose that title because it's Washington Street, but it's not Washington, Washington. So people got confused.
Right.
They said, there's a bunch of spies there. I mean, the whole thing was ridiculous.
Yeah.
Just because of the name.
Right. But and this was before Joel met Soros, who I guess became his main funder.
Yes.
But Henry was, and there was some other person's name who was also supposedly an entrepreneur or something who helped finance.
Yes, Mitchell Waite. was a computer entrepreneur
Yeah.
early. And he published, he had an office at Henry's at 3220, and he published, I actually never looked at that book, but Henry was learning desktop publishing. That's why Information Moscow came out. I should actually send you, I do have an old copy. I can send it to you.
Really? That'd be fantastic.
Yeah. Do I even have one to show? Well, you'll see it.
Or just take a picture of the cover of it and send it to me if you don't want to get rid of it.
No. I'll send it to you because the reason why it even got published was Henry's interest in desktop publishing.
I see.
We were the most comprehensive book that came out. It was 500 pages, trade and travel directory.
Wow.
So I collected the articles. It was a way for me to open up so that Westerners weren't afraid to go. This is 85 when I came upon this small guide that Victor Louis, who was a famous, he wasn't a spy, he was an agent.
Okay.
He drove around the Soviet Union with his English wife, Jennifer, and they created a map of all the roads you could go on, but none of the diplomats could go out because it was off territory. I mean, they did things like that.
Yeah.
Anyway, I took this thing and I thought, you know, we could really do something here to open up because especially entrepreneurs were afraid to go. In fact, the commercial office had nothing to give entrepreneurs in the 80s. And they sold my book illegally there.
Really?
Yes.
Really? Interesting.
And the secretary of the commercial, she said, "Oh, you have no idea how happy I am that you did this book because I can't answer all those questions. They come in here and I don't know what to tell them. There's no phone books."
Right. Well, in the early 90s, I published with a Russian friend a directory of Yaroslavl Oblast, which was also unknown territory.
Of course. There you go. Well, so Victor Louis had this thing, and I bought the rights from the Dimes group. He did business in the Soviet Union. I never could figure out what it was.
Yeah.
It didn't matter. We were able, I wanted to tell you, I think you should talk to, and she loves to talk unless she's not well. The daughter of George Kennan, Grace Kennan.
Yeah.
Why?
Why?
She actually created a program for women in Petersburg to study entrepreneurship, and they helped them create small businesses.
Really? When?
Yes.
What years was that? In the 80s or 90s?
In the 90s. In the 90s.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, she became a good friend, but I lost track of her. There's just, so many things. She was very important in the early years because of who she was and her continuing interest in the Soviet Union. Yeah, Grace she's a lovely human being, and she used her connection because everybody knew who her father was. It was called Sovus, Sovus.
Okay.
I don't have anything I can show you, but I will give you her email address.
That would be fantastic. Fantastic.
She just wrote a memoir 2 or 3 years ago. I can't remember the title. She was raised as a young child in Russia because her father was ambassador for a while.
Right. Wow.
Yeah,
it's Grace Kennan, so I can just Google that, hopefully.
Grace W. Warnicki for her last husband, Kennan. Yeah.
Okay.
she helped me host an artist's exhibit at St. John the Divine. Her apartment wasn't very far away. And so I was able to, she's a really incredible human being. I mean, Grace was a photographer, and we got her into the One Day in the Life of the Soviet Union book. She was editor of photographs for that. That was the right person to do it.
Right. Yes. Yes, exactly the right person. Yeah.
So those synchronicities, when they fell together, were perfect sometimes. And sometimes there's there's a parallel track, but it's in different areas.
Right. Right.
But the interest is still there. And